Hi, I'm Duncan Ferris, and I am delighted to welcome you to another episode of the Investing Intel podcast. This week, we're going to be discussing drones, aerospace, and defense with the President and CEO of Draganfly, that's Chell. It's a really fascinating discussion. We're going to be delving into some of the cutting-edge technology and developments in the space, as well as looking for some little tips and tricks for retail investors who are looking to get involved. That's enough waffle from me. Let's get on with the show. So, hello, Chell, the President and CEO of Draganfly. Welcome to the show today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Duncan.
How are you doing? Everything okay where you are?
Yeah. Things are good. Super busy. It's early in the morning here, so this time works great, and I look forward to the opportunity to speak with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
No worries. I just sort of first wanted to start. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your career in defense and aerospace?
Sure. Serial entrepreneur, product kind of architect is generally the role that I fill within the organizations I've got to work with. Back in the very early 2000s, late 90s, designed and built a company with a great team called FutureLink, which was the original cloud computing company. So this is the company that was the first company that took software and put it on servers, and then used this thing called the internet back then to dial up and access this software. Typically, we were using accounting software. Auditors were going in and doing audits, but they didn't. Back then, computers were the size of sewing machines, and the laptops or the transportables they called them. So we got really lucky and did a deal with Microsoft, and then Great Plains, and then the .com happened, and we were off and running, and then I got involved deeply in the payment space and did some design and some finance work and around that. And then, kind of fast forward, a number of different projects, but as it relates specifically to aerospace, built a company with a couple of other partners called Earthcast. And what we did at Earthcast is we took video cameras and we installed them on the outside of the International Space Station. And so it's the first video ever from space. And so both in 1 meter and 3 meter resolution. And so because it was the only video from space and it was on a very unique platform, being the International Space Station, it was incredibly unique data. And so we would sell this data to, governments and hedge funds and, the ministries of interiors and, Coast Guards and, you name it. It was just, and so those cameras are still up and operational on the International Space Station today. And then about 12 years ago, I started building drones and came across Draganfly and put an investment group together and bought the company. But I had been following the company for years and years. I mean, Draganfly is the original, drone manufacturing kind of, and technically, I think we believe anyway, today is the oldest commercial drone manufacturer in the world. Not so much because it was maybe the first, it was certainly amongst the first, but it's the only one that survived this long.
Well, so you've come down a bit in altitude from space to beyond low Earth orbit with what you're working on, and you're in the atmosphere now.
Yeah,
basically.
I'm in the atmosphere, sure. Yeah.
Nice. And what can you tell me about what makes Draganfly and the products that Draganfly produces? What makes the company unique? What does the company get up to?
Yeah, so a big part of our company, well, this is my own personal philosophy, is the only competitive differentiator a company has is its culture. It's eventually, your price, your IP, your innovation, your insight, all of those types of things are all only a function of the culture of the company that you build. And so, being a company that's 25 years old, in that time, there's, our original founder has retired. But other than that, there's only 2 other employees that have ever left. So we have an incredibly strong and deep bench in the organization on our engineering side and our product development side. We're really, really deep in the industry in terms of like the innovation and people who are well placed, looking for things that need to get designed. So we tend to get really tough problems, the opportunity to work on really tough problems. So as a company, we're a full solution provider. And even though at this point, even though we're now growing at a breakneck pace, it's just incredible what's unfolding. But even though we're still really quite a small company, we have the ability to do what most companies, certainly end to end, can't do. And it's because we have so many people that have so much well-rounded knowledge. We definitely have specialists in the company, but we have a very, very strong bench of people that know everything, if that makes sense. Like everything about the industry, everything about every piece of engineering, everything about every piece of like communications. Like it's just, so we can do things that for our customers that most companies just can't do. So now how that's played out in the market that's become really important is data and security. So because you're collecting so much incredible data and security is so important, the customers that are dealing with us anyways are looking for organizations that can deal with everything from like design to services to analytics of data, and because they do not want, because you have to have all the right clearances, all the right classifications, all the right bonding, they don't want their data. It's the most important asset these companies have. They want to know every single step of the value chain of that data. And so that's one of the things that Draganfly can do that we seem to be very unique in the industry.
Great. And your products as well seem to have really quite broad applications. Like most people, I don't know, thinking about drones might think of them maybe as something that's used on a battlefield or maybe something that's used for recreation. I'm sure we all saw a couple of years ago when Amazon started touting delivering packages with drones, but really there's so many different uses, aren't there, that Draganfly is involved in.
Yeah. So even I'm in this 10, 15 hours a day, and it almost seems like daily there's a new really important use case that comes up that hasn't been thought of, that because you did this, now you can do this. So it's really, I really do see, being the age I am, I see the drone industry at coming up to the same inflection point as I'll call it the internet industry, where, when the internet first came out, we thought, email was the killer application. And, today society would have a tough time operating without the internet. We've become so dependent on it. It's been so many innovations are built on it. And yeah, that would have been very hard to imagine back then, like the utility of the internet being what it is today. And so I think somewhat the utility of the drone industry is like, hey, this is novel. That's great. There's lots of cool things. You can deliver packages. You can collect some data. It is so much deeper than that. This is a core piece of infrastructure that will weave into our social economics of how we operate and how we live and how we expect things to operate around us. And so the use cases are absolutely enormous. Speaking to that a little bit as it relates to the latest product that we come out with, we released 3 new products this year, and early next year we'll have 3 new more products coming out. But each of our products this year are really designed as platforms. And so the most popular of which we just can't keep up with demand right now, is what we call our 3XL. So this is a drone that's about the size of a coffee table, but it's still under 55 pounds. Now, the reason that's important is it's still considered a small unmanned aerial vehicle by FAA regulations and such. Now, the efficiency of this drone is really quite incredible. So it's about a 23-pound drone that can carry 25 pounds of payload. So it's carrying more than, and it's got a flight time of about an hour. And it's got a huge battery pack, and it's got so you can multiple sensors, and so the idea behind this drone in particular is that basically for the industry, it already has 17 different payloads that can just snap onto this thing, integrated with software. But it's a universal drone, so anything can just fit onto this thing on the rails and on the universal mounts. So I kind of liken it to the the Humvee of the 90s, or the Jeep of the the World War II. It's like that's the base utility vehicle, and then everything else you need to strap onto this thing, you can. Now, certainly there's going to be other use cases. Like, if you want to fly a small drone, down inside a mine, this isn't the drone to use. But for 80% of the other use cases out there, it's not the drone that's the most important thing. If you've got the right platform, which this is, the most important thing at that point becomes, what payloads are you putting onto this? What sensors can you run with it? What's integrated on the software? How secure is the data transmission? Those types of things become most important.
And I suppose that means you don't have to focus on any one particular niche. If you're building a platform like that, you can attempt to exploit all of those different use cases, really.
Well, you can. Now we have subject matter expertise in each one of these industries, and actually in subsections of those industries. So, Draganfly's overall strategy, 5 years from now, certainly, and hopefully we'll be known as a drone company. But the reality is, even almost today, and certainly 5 years from now, we're a data company. So, we have our own data facility, or infrastructure, excuse me. And so more and more what we see is a customer comes to us, and they may be looking for, the life cycle of a customer, and it's maturing quickly, is like, oh, we want to buy a drone. We have 3 pilots. We have this, we're a forestry company. We want to go fly our reserve and understand where we want to, fly a LiDAR mission, so we can understand the topographics and where we're going to cut a road in. And once they get some exposure to that, we've done some training with them. Inside of a year, it's more like, they've got 3 pilots, but they're hiring 5 of our pilots, and we're delivering to them, not just a topographical map of their reserve, but we're, in that same missions, we're doing disease analysis, we're doing yield analysis, we're doing water table analysis, we're doing air quality analysis, we're doing like all kinds of things, and we're delivering terabytes of data to them on every single mission. And the data and the information they're getting is completely revolutionizing their business and their decision process. So, but they're a forestry company. They're not an IT company. They're not a data analytics company. They're, so more and more what we see is they're saying, hey, can you house that data for us? Can you manage our permissions? Can you handle our security? Can you help apply data scientists into this? And so we have 6 areas of expertise currently that range from, mine detection, like land mine detection, which we do very actively in the Ukraine, right through to forestry, to mining exploration, in particular for battery metals, right through to long form infrastructure. And in each of those areas, we have either developed proprietary sensors or software or AI that enables us to deliver data to our customer that they can't get anywhere else. So now we're an incredibly important part of their value chain out to their customers. And that's where we're going to continue to, so whether it's with our military customers, or whether it's with our resource customers, or whether it's with our law enforcement customers, we're going to continue to follow that strategy, so that we are a critical part of the data and the decision process that they run their organizations with. Our overall objective is to make them more competitive. Like, that's, if we do that for our customers, then we've done our job.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really interesting, and it makes me want to jump forward a little bit in the questions I was going to ask, because thinking about all this stuff to do with data and helping your customers with it makes me think about how AI has just jumped on the scene this year, kind of, and blown things apart in a lot of ways. And what kind of ramifications does AI have, not just for your company, but for the defense industry as a whole? We've seen it cropping up in a number of areas, but do you have any insight you can offer on how AI might change the future of your company and other companies in the space?
Yeah, so we've had an AI bench for years. And the insight for us to be able to have stood up an AI bench is really driven by the fact that AI, the underlying AI, is data, and without data, AI is useless. But the more data you have, the more effective it is. Well, nothing collects data better than a drone. So we've been able to early on see the value and where AI is going to drive things, because we collect so much data. So we stood up an AI bench, to be able to utilize our data. And quite frankly, that's becoming our, other than our culture, that's becoming our strategic differentiator. So with us, every AI engine eventually is going to, kind of level out as a commodity where, within, kind of like, 1 to 3 or 4 or 5%, whatever, they're all kind of going to be the same. And somebody in AI is going to like lose their head and tell me how wrong that is. But yeah, but follow the logic. The differentiator for an AI engine is the data that you input into it. So if we put drones up and we're collecting, 75 different types of data, whether it's environmental data, LiDAR data, visual data, you name it. Like it just goes, noxious gas data, all at the same time, and you're inputting that into, your data sets as you're flying a forestry reserve, or you're flying, a combat theater or something like that. You've got a strategic advantage. So for us, as an example, a number of years ago, we had a sheriff's department during the pandemic approached us and said, hey, could you, from the drones, could you build some software, some machine vision software that would allow us to determine if people are wearing masks and social distancing? The reason they wanted to do that is they wanted to correlate if there was any compliance with ordinance compared with outbreaks. So if there was areas where people, weren't wearing masks, weren't social distancing, and there was an outbreak in that area. They also wanted to see if their public awareness campaign was working. Did they need to change their messaging? Did they need to put up more billboards? Did they need to put, resources on the ground, in order to, help enforce the ordinance? And so anyway, we got a great result out of that. And they learned a lot of incredible data, or a lot of incredible information that allowed them to change in some of their tactics. So one of the officers on deployment, she said to us, well, this is really cool, and she kind of said it kiddingly. She said, could you, detect COVID-19? And we all kind of laughed. And so fast forward 9 months later, our cameras were able to, using data science and AI, are able to, and they can today, they can read heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure, blood oxygen level, heart rate variability. And of course, if you've got a thermal device or a camera on their sensor, then you can get your temperature too. Now, those are all the characteristics that determine if you've got an infectious condition. So AI has allowed us to use cameras now to determine if there's an infectious condition. So, or the health of a survivor in a search and rescue operation, or the health of a combatant or a wounded soldier, or the stress levels of combatants that maybe you're working with or for or against or whatever in a battlefield, or now the technology itself has actually now been deployed. We've deployed it into correctional facilities. So as a prisoner's being intake into a facility, rather than having to have guards in there and medical staff putting on blood pressure bands and taking temperatures and that type of stuff, which is a risky scenario. They literally, they come into the intake and they're not in the room, there's a camera, and the camera's taking all the vital signs. Right? So the implications of that type of stuff and the innovation that comes out of AI is absolutely imperative. And so for us, right, it's a complete and total focus. And it really drove some of our product design right back to the, to our airframe. And that's why our airframe is so designed such a way that it carries so much battery life, because we want to run as many sensors as possible at the same time. So AI is it really is at the core of our product design.
Did you know that there are more than 19,000 securities listed on North American exchanges alone? With all of that to sift through, it's no wonder that finding your next investing idea can be such a challenge. Luckily, the Investing Intel newsletter is here to help. Every week, we delve into different topics and industries to unearth interesting stocks and exciting insights. If you want to make sure that it hits your inbox, just head to investingintel.valuethemarkets.com and hit the subscribe button. Yeah, wow. And like, I mean, you can already see the influence certainly of drones in Ukraine. A lot of like footage and like if you follow it closely, you see kind of like monitoring of like enemy positions and that kind of thing from drone footage going on in the conflict in Ukraine. But I was wondering more broadly as well, what kind of effect does a major conflict like that have on the aerospace and defense industry?
Yeah, complete and total acceleration. So certainly before Ukraine, there was significant resistance or hesitation for larger budgets to move away from what I'll call it large aerospace platforms into small UAS. So large manned systems, satellite integrated, multi-command structures, multi-billion-dollar platforms, right? For everything from reconnaissance to tactical coverage to whatever the case is. So as much as the rest of the drone industry was saying, wait, there's another way that this can be done, it needed a proving ground, and Ukraine has accelerated that proving ground and proved it. So today, what you see is that typically in a conflict or in a theater, air dominance is probably the largest strategic, one of, if not the largest strategic factor to determine what the outcome of that theater is going to be. So if you dominate that airspace, right, you dominate, you've got everything from tactics to information, you own it. And so that's why there's so much effort put into that. But from 10,000 feet down, airspace is now dominated by small UAS. Regardless of the size of the big systems you put up there, you can put up billion-dollar systems from 10,000 feet down, which is where most of your strategy and tactics need to happen from. It's all small UAS. So these are all systems that are, $1 million system in that is like a massively expensive system. So most of these systems are like less than $100,000, right? And some of them, quite frankly, are a couple $1,000. And so, that's really, this is bigger than the advent of the tank in World War I by far. The other piece of that is that nothing, collects data better than a drone. And now what we're seeing is that nothing probably delivers precision ordnance better than a drone in that area. So right now there's this arms race that's happening between, drone, counter drone, and literally on a weekly basis, the stakes are upping. Because the effectiveness of being able to have, close quarter air coverage, close quarter data collection, all of that type of stuff, it's so readily available at such an inexpensive price, is game changing. So now what we're seeing is military budgets, obviously globally, military budgets are exponentially growing right now because of the geopolitics that's happening, because of nationalization that's happening around the world, et cetera, et cetera. And within those budgets, we're seeing small UAS as if not the primary focus, for cost reduction and for effectiveness and such. So it's from that aspect, and because you can throw AI into these things, and your automation factor, it's unbelievable. So I'm not sure if I'm exactly answering your question, but hopefully that gives a lay of the land of the impact that we've seen the Ukraine conflict exponentially move forward the small UAS industry.
Yeah, wow. And do you think that that's something that is kind of reflected more broadly across defense and aerospace, aside from drones specifically, or do you think drones have kind of been like the big winner kind of in terms of that fresh investment that's gone on there?
Well, they are certainly, if you want to call it, the big winner, and they're emerging as the big winner because airspace in theater is so precious. So that's what, there's going to continue to be massive budget and focus in that area. However, you now see this, not that it wasn't prevalent before, but you now see this accelerating into other areas. It might be ground tactics, it might be underwater drones, it might be, devices like a basic autonomy, right, on the battlefield in all areas, whether that's ground, air, sea, cyber, you name it. It's autonomy and AI is the big investment now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of reminiscent of like a lot of these new technologies that will kind of like become massive in the civilian space seem to start off as military innovations, or think about even things like radar and LiDAR and stuff like that. A lot of it seems to start in the military space, and then in the future you see it translating across to civilian use cases a lot more as well.
Yeah, and I think what's happened in the drone industry is is that you saw autonomy, or you saw unmanned happening at a military level, and then the drone space, the commercial drone space, actually started in the hobby remote control space. That's where this whole thing started, and then that's emerged into some innovation that happened amongst hobbyists that created this quadcopter thing, which was a much more stable, fun platform to fly. And then, oh my gosh, you could put a camera on that thing. Now all of a sudden it had utility, and so it grew commercially. But now that it's it's the military application has been I wouldn't say proven out. It's proving out. Those innovations, as you have mentioned, they're now accelerating back into the commercial space. Just even in terms of adoption, acceptance, adoption. And now integration of all kinds of different technologies into the commercial environment.
I like so looking from acceleration of investment and things like that to more sort of challenges. Like the conflict in Ukraine has created a lot of particularly supply chain challenges for a lot of industries. Is that something that's true of defense and aerospace as well? And are there any other kind of really major challenges that the space is facing right now?
Certainly supply chain is one, and for lots of different reasons. In particular, the geopolitical reasons and the dependence that the globe has had on Chinese manufacturing. And so foreign national manufacturing for any country, right? So I'm not just talking about the NATO or the Five Eyes, but any country now, drones are just so absolutely critical to the strategy and tactics that we see a nationalization that no matter who you're representing, you're seeing nationalization of that manufacturing internally. But that also means that you need to have chip manufacturing internally. You need to have motor manufacturing internally. You need to have, and previous to that, those are global supply chains. And so the global supply chain from got severely tested and broken through the pandemic. And now due to the geopolitics, there's this requirement to nationalize, not nationalize, but to bring in to national borders all of those things. And so when you've got requirements from government saying, hey, this entire unit has to be made, built, certified here, everything from your motors to your cyber to everything else, so that infrastructure to be able to do that and supply it at scale is really the thing that's been kind of constraining the industry. And it's so we've seen that ourselves. So there's we could be 10 times our size. We'd never meet our demand right now, not even close. And so our constraint right now is we just got, we upgraded one of our plants this year. We opened just like literally last month, opened up a new plant, and we're already at the spot where we got to expand it again. And that's gonna be a common theme for us for the next couple of years. So I'd say that's probably our biggest challenge, which quite frankly is a luxury challenge.
It's like an quite interesting one that is, you're right, it really does seem to be a trend right now. We were talking to some folks the other day about energy security in Europe, which it's really the same kind of thing. Do you have the ability to produce the energy yourself rather than import it from Russia or somewhere that might just become unstable and then suddenly you're cut off? I wanted as well,
energy security, food security, data security, all of those things. This is the new reality. You're right.
And sort of thinking about what retail investors how they can approach the industry now. Like, what do you think is attractive about aerospace and defense for a retail investor?
I think what's very attractive about it is first of all the trend, right? So the massive budgets that are going into this, and if we look at again the geopolitical space for the next 15 years, budgets as it relates to this are going to continue to increase, and those things are not affected by recession. These budgets are affected by geopolitics, and so depending on where you think that's going, certainly based on the knowledge I have, that the next 15 years is massive amounts of required spending. So that's the first thing, is like the industry trend. The second thing is looking at the fact that you've got these now uh, companies within borders that have to be built. And so it's a different competitive landscape. Our competitor is no longer DGI. And I like DGI. Most people, in my space in North America, have a hate on for them. I think they're an amazing company. They've done incredible things. I love a lot of their products. They're really, really solid, and the engineering is incredible. But the reality is that's not necessarily our competition. And on the commercial side, I think a lot of their products should continue to be used, and we support them, and on and on. So when you look at it from a retail perspective, it's a very unique time, in particular in the drone industry and maybe other industries similar to us, where you go like, okay, hey, who's going to be the new dominant player? Who's going to be the new billion-dollar player? Because in the next 3 years, there's going to be 2 or 3 that will emerge as the billion-dollar plus players, kind of like the giants in the industry. And that's our goal. Like, we've really are working to position ourselves as to be that number 1, 2, 3, kind of North American based player. And if you understand the landscape, you go, hey, maybe these companies right now are doing, $5 to $25 billion a year in revenue, incredibly small, right? But when you look at their pipelines and you look at what's happening in the world, these are the companies that are going to be doing hundreds of millions of dollars literally in the next few years. And so from a retail perspective, I think the trend is the geopolitics and seeing how you can take advantage of that. I don't know of a better industry to take advantage of that in than the drone industry. And there's kind of like kind of 4 or 5 public retail facing opportunities that people can get invested in. I would suggest that a new emergent company coming up, so a new startup, getting into it, that's maybe getting newly public now and emerging out. I kind of feel like it's almost too late. So amongst those 4 or 5 bets out there, I think those there's that are public. I think there's a couple of them in there that are likely going to be the winners, and hopefully we're one of them.
It seems like, a space generally that has pretty high barriers to entry, really. I mean, you talk about the immense technical knowledge that your team have and how well-rounded that knowledge is. It must be very hard for someone to kind of break in, really, because surely you need that wealth of knowledge.
Interesting enough, anybody can put an airframe together. Anybody, you can go to the internet, you can figure out how to build a drone, and you can get your parts and order them in, and all of a sudden you think you're a drone, I got this great idea. I'm going to do something I'm going to put a camera on this, and I'm in a hot spot for wildfires. And literally within a few months and, $25,000 or $50,000, you can build a drone, and you think you're in the drone. And this is, you're talking about devices that are airplanes. So the FAA and Transport Canada, as an example, and the UK and all the Five Eyes nations, these are aircraft. And so the testing that you have to go through to get them into a commercial sense, the liability, aspects of your customers using your drones, and the liability they have to face, all that, it's incredibly difficult. And a lot of people are saying, geez, Cam, there's so much demand out there. Why are you not scaling faster? And it's like, man, when you have to build, for forever, like you have to build something long standing, lasting, it's like the development cycle and the regulatory cycle and everything is very, very complex, and it's getting more complex, which for us is a good thing because it does create a barrier of entry. So it's seemingly easy to get into this business. It's very hard to scale in this business. And it's very hard to get the tier 1 customers because of the regulatory environment. But if you can become an incumbent, and then, everything from your margin to your ability to gain market share is very, very, high potential.
And you mentioned so much about geopolitics, and I mean, sort of in the wider space, the US government is a pretty big customer for the aerospace and defense industry, and I sort of wonder how much you think people who want to invest in the space should be paying attention to, things like the debt ceiling crisis that's happened recently, and sort of military budgets and stuff. Is that something that people really need to be keyed into?
Well, in this particular industry, and as it relates to those types of things, this is the one area where it's recession proof, and it's probably the one area where the debt ceiling, isn't a factor. It's probably one of the things that's driving the debt ceiling, but it's a justifiable thing. So those critical national security measures and means, and again, whether that's military, whether it's collecting data, for the Department of Interior, or whether it's oceans, or whether it's any of that type of stuff, environment. These are all critical. These are things that budgets are being. That's why the debt ceiling is being pushed. And candidly, it's if we think about what brought us out of the Great Depression, or out of the recessionary times in some of the 70s, it was geopolitics, right? It was war. Now, I'm not supportive of that in any way, but that is just the reality of where we're going, and that's why the spending in this area is going to continue to increase.
And just finally, I wondered if there were, I wondered if there's any sort of tips that you'd share for our retail investors, anything in particular that you think they should really pay attention to within this space, anything that's going to be hot stuff, or anything to monitor, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I think innovations is always, something to watch, but it tends to be what a retail investor, kind of keys on. Oh, this is the coolest innovation. It's going to take over. It's going to do, those types of things. And quite frankly, at this point, for a retail investor, I think what they want to be looking at is customers. Which customers are signing up? Because right now, in this phase of the industry, and for the next few years, while innovation's important, what's more important is production. So right now we could come up with the greatest, and we've got some incredible innovations that whereas there's no point in even talking about them, because right now, we've got two generational, if we think about where our products could be today, we're still, working super hard to meet the production demands of the current market, not even the future market. And so the organization that can best get product to market and scale that production for the customers is the most strategically important thing right now. So what does that mean? That means you have to have existing infrastructure. You have to have existing resources, whether that's people or capital. You have to have existing customer bases. You have to have existing certifications, classifications, all of that type of stuff, which is a thing that takes years and years to get. It takes months to build a drone. You can put new products together quickly, but to actually have a value chain that can provide the production numbers that are required by these customers, that's the real key. So I would look to the companies that are probably the most mature in that space and most likely to be able to deliver production, because those are who customers are going to come back to. So if new innovation starts happening in the industry, it's organizations like us that continue to innovate. But if somebody's out innovating us, which always happens in industry, we've got the distribution and the access to the customer. So, maybe we're hopefully able to go back in and do, M&A deals or stuff like that, and move those innovations, through our value chain.
Okay. No, that's really interesting. And there is one question that I sort of missed as well, and that was to do with, it can be quite a technical space, certainly to try and get your head around. And I wonder if you think that that's something that might put off some investors, where they think, I'm not sure that I really understand it. And do you think, is that a concern for defense and aerospace companies?
Well, I think, I'm completely biased, but I think it's quite the opposite. Tech is what defines your innovative advantage within any industry that you're in. So you might be in food security or agriculture, or pharmaceuticals or retail or whatever it is. It's your tech innovation that's giving you that advantage in there. So in this particular space, there's so many nuances of technology that can give you advantage. So, being able to establish a platform, which I think we've done in particular with our Commander 3 XL. This is a technology platform. That coffee table size platform, drone system is what allows us to put, hundreds, if not, depending on how you think about it, thousands of innovations into particular use cases and industries. So if an investor is afraid of technology, this probably is not an area to be involved in. But if they are one that recognizes and embraces, hey, what the impact that technology has within particular industries, this is probably the industry that will probably have the most applicability to cause effect into each one of those areas. So, one would argue, oh no, AI is going to have the biggest effect now in the next, 10 years or whatever. But if you think about where AI is applied, this is probably one of those cases where you're going to see it, drive more visibly into each one of those industries, because, AI is dependent on data, and nothing collects data better than a drone. You've got a drone that's, in airspace, right? So it's got 3-dimensional, it's got communication capability, it's got massive data packs, and you can literally put on dozens of different sensors, collecting multiple different types of data sets that can inform your AI engine. So, so the answer is, if you're intimidated by tech, drone is not the place to be. But if you recognize that tech, including AI, is going to be driving the future, drone is probably the most poignant point where you can take advantage of all of those trends.
Yeah, it sounds like a really exciting industry to be a part of, and it's been a really interesting conversation. I just want to thank you for coming on the show. That's all the questions I got for you today.
Yeah, Duncan, thanks. Great. Thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for all that you guys do over there. You run a great shop.
That's all we got time for today, but thank you for listening to this episode of the Investing Intel podcast. If you haven't already, why don't you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes? And if you'd like to find out more about any of the topics Cameron and I discussed today, head down to the description. You can find some useful content there and some great links as well. If you're looking for more investment content besides that, subscribe to the Investing Intel newsletter on Substack, or just visit valuethemarkets.com. Thanks again. See you next time.